Load up on buns and bring your friends, because today we're talking about ISO. So grab your camera gear and follow along. It's fun to do and to pretend. ISO, you've seen those letters before, but what do they mean? Searching for something? Signs on the streets? In certain soups, bisons, poisons, even in this misogynist episode? But wait, it's camera related. Image stabilization options? Well, it has to do with the sensitivity to light, so you'd think the acronym would reflect that. But nope, ISO just stands for the International Standardization Organization. It used to be known as ASA on film, but that's just the American Standardization Association. Yep, it has nothing to do with what it actually does. Pretty disappointing, I must say. So let's just pretend it stands for the Image Sensitivity Optimization. It sounds a lot cooler, and it makes a little bit more sense, even though that's not actually what it stands for.
So let's get down to the nitty-gritty.
While aperture and shutter speed physically control how much light hits the sensor, ISO does it digitally. Higher ISOs will let more light in, so the demand on shutter speed and aperture decreases. Higher ISOs allows us to shoot in much higher shutter speeds and also allows us to see in darker situations.
With the lights out, it's less dangerous when we have ISO on our side.
Shutter speed and ISO are actually mathematically connected. So say the ISO was at 200 and shutter speed at 1/125th of a second. If we doubled ISO to 400, we'd only need half of the light as before. So this will allow us to shoot at 1/250th of a second to get that same exposure. If the lighting is too dim, we have our aperture wide open, and our shutter speed is at its slowest without risking motion blur, we can bump the ISO, the digital sensitivity to light, to make up the difference. But we can't bump up the ISO too high or else we'll introduce noise.
Noise!
Not that kind of noise. Music metaphor.
Here we are now. So entertain us.
Let's think about mic a second. A mic captures sound waves, then it turns it into a digital signal, like an MP3 for example. If my input settings are correct, I should sound pretty clear. But say I'm far away from the microphone and you can't hear me as good. I'm talking at the same volume as before, so the only option is to increase the overall volume. But if we do so, we introduce lots of unwanted noise.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Hello. Hello. Hello. Hello. But the problem with doing this is now we have the noise from the outside, we have humming of the room, we have a lot of background noise elements, so even though the voice is just as loud as before, it's not as pretty. It's not as clear as before because we introduce so many more distracting elements. The sensitivity is high, so we hear things we don't even want to hear. The same things happens with cam and ISO. Increasing the sensitivity to light increases the sensitivity to everything, even things we don't want to see, so the images will end up looking more grainy. And we also introduce chromatic aberrations. Oh no, I know a dirty word. Color accuracy is reduced, and dynamic range is also reduced. We can test this out now by maxing out the ISO and
zooming in 100%.
At the highest ISO, we could barely make out the necklace, too much grain. But at the lowest ISO, it's perfectly clear. Highest ISO, lowest ISO. So generally speaking, we want to use the lowest ISO possible at all times. But the lowest ISO requires a lot of ambient light. So if we're outside or near a big window, we're pretty safe. But shooting after sunset or later, or walking away from the window, we'll have a hard time not seeing black. Shooting ISO at 100 during nighttime is almost impossible unless we introduce artificial lighting. But I'll teach you artificial lighting at a later episode. I'm worst at what I do best, but for this gift I feel blessed. We can get away with the mid ISO range and avoid the negative side effects. Every camera is different and your safe ISO depends on your camera model. Older cameras can barely handle 1000 ISO, but some of the newer cameras coming out today can handle over 2 million. My old D5100 can barely handle 1000. She's overboard and self-assured. You can research online what your tolerable ISO is for your particular camera, and then test it out yourself by purposely taking pictures in the dark, bumping up the ISO, zooming in at 100%, and seeing when the level of grain is a little bit too much. Make a note of what your ISO threshold was, and try not to go over it in the future. You can even go into your auto ISO settings and set this as the max ISO possible. So if you ever set ISO on auto, then you never have to worry about it again and forget this whole lesson. But sometimes for artistic effect, maybe we do want some grain and noise. It gives it that old film grain vibe. And it's really good for black and white, high contrast photos.
I guess sometimes it's good to go against the grain.
Anywho, I hope this quick lesson demystified ISO and made you more comfortable with your camera settings. So go out there and shoot things in the dark, but know your limits. You can shoot many things like a mulatto, an albino,
A mosquito?
my libido. That's only 1/3 of the exposure triangle. If you want to get the complete picture,
Pun intended.
make sure to subscribe and watch the aperture video as well as the shutter speed video, and you'll be a regular light bender in no time. When I started this video, I found it hard. It's hard to find a good metaphor for ISO, but I think the microphone example painted the picture. What's your max ISO? I want you to go to the comments and leave a comment about which camera model you have and how high is your tolerable ISO limit on your brand of camera. Don't forget to leave the brand of camera so other people will benefit from it. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Wait, I already said that. Oh well, whatever, never mind.